Hey, welcome to episode 8 of the Undiscovered Games video podcast, where we take a look at the lesser-known board games of the world and share those with you. For this episode, I thought it would be fun to do another list. This is not necessarily a top 10 list, but this is a list of games from my collection that I thought deserve more attention, and these are all for 2 players only. Now, if you've ever played any of these or if you have any questions, make sure you hit me up in the comments section below, and also make sure to click subscribe because this channel is all about undiscovered games. So every time you see an update from our page, it's going to be a lesser known board game that maybe you've never heard about. Now let's get into this list of 6 2-player only games that you probably missed. I'm going to do a brief overview of each game and then you can decide whether you want to look into them further. Number 6 on the list is Rumpelstiltskin. This is a small box game from AEG way back in 2015, designed by Nate Heiss. The goal of this game is to guess your opponent's identity. It's a guessing and deduction game with beautiful card artwork, and basically each player has the same deck of cards, and at any given moment during the game, whichever card is on the bottom of your deck is your secret identity. So essentially, you're just trying to guess your opponent's bottom card. That can change throughout the game depending on the cards you play. All these cards do different things. There are different ways to mix up your deck or mix up your opponent's deck. And there's some reaction cards you can play as well. And it's just a great little back and forth card game. And you got to remember too that every time you play a card, you're revealing a little information to your opponent that you are not that character. And also, not every card lets you guess. So you might be able to affect your opponent's deck, but then you're not allowed to guess until you play a card that lets you guess. So it's just a fun little couch game that my wife and I break out from time to time. Love the artwork, love how fast it plays. We usually just do like a best of 5. It gives you cubes so you can easily track who's winning. This is a great game for kids or for grandmas or for gamers who just want to chill on the couch and maybe watch a movie and play a casual game. Check out Rumpelstiltskin by AEG. Speaking of AEG, number 5 is Greedy Kingdoms by Hayato Kisaragi and Bruno Faduti. This version is from 2018, and it's a resource management bluffing game, and it's unlike any other 2-player game I've played, really. It's really unique. You're going to be sending your heroes out into battle, and if they can get through the battle, they're going to collect resources for you, and you're going to be able to spend these resources on better heroes, buildings, upgrades, things like that. But ultimately, you're trying to be the first player to build 2 royal palaces by spending the required resources. Now, as you play these hero cards to collect resources, your opponent is also going to be playing cards from the same deck. They have the same deck of heroes, and they're going to be trying to stop you by playing the same cards they think you might play. And I'll get to that in a minute. Each hero has an upgraded version that you can invest in, but there's only one version of each hero. So for instance, the Baron here would upgrade to the Duke, but only one player would be able to get the Duke, and she just gives you a little bit better stuff than the Baron does. But if you get the Duke, your opponent is not getting the Duke. And when you're the attacker, you pick 3 cards to send into battle. You're thinking about what you want to collect, but you're also trying not to be too obvious because your opponent is going to be trying to stop you. So you pick 3 cards, you're trying to, get in each other's heads at this point in the game. And when you pick 3 cards, your opponent also picks 3 cards, and then you reveal. And whichever ones that match do not make it through the battle. So the painter there cancels each other out, but they did not stop the traveler or the baron, so you get to collect the resources showing at the top of each card. And then the next turn, your opponent will be the attacker and you will be the defender trying to block them. You just take turns doing that. Then you can buy stuff from the marketplace here. There's all kinds of cool items and buildings that come out you can buy to help build your engine a little bit or whatever. Or you can upgrade your hero by spending 2 of any resource. And the way that works is you just pay the resources, flip the top card, and replace it with the card in your deck. So this is the Sage, which replaces the Witch. So you just swap those out. Now you have the Sage, which gives you better stuff. Now your opponent could still block you by playing the Witch because you just match the symbols. It still has the same symbol there, but it's just a better version if you can get that through the battle. So you're just taking turns, battling, trying to get in each other's heads, trying to get those resources, because ultimately you're trying to build these royal palaces, be the first player to build 2 of those, and you'll win the game instantly. And there's a lot of replay value here as this market deck comes out differently every time. There's a lot of really cool abilities that you can invest in here that are pretty powerful and worth going for. Or you can just try to upgrade your heroes before your opponent can. So there's a nice little interaction there, especially in the battle phase when you're getting in each other's heads and trying to block each other. And you'd be surprised how often you do block each other successfully. I mean, you have a big deck of hero cards there, but when you're playing the game, you have an idea of what your opponent needs and wants, and it's just fun to try to stop them and try to, sneak cards through that your opponent isn't expecting. Now, the rulebook does say you can play this with 3 to 4 players if you purchase another copy of the game. I have not tried that, so if anybody has ever played Greedy Kingdoms with more than 2 players, let me know in the comments, and I'd love to hear about it. Let's keep this list moving. We're going to head outdoors and look for some mushrooms in this game called Morels, designed by Brent Povis back in 2012. This is a very thematic game about walking through the woods and collecting different types of mushrooms to cook and eat. Now, there's also some other things you need to invest in, like frying pans to be able to cook more mushrooms, baskets to help up your hand limit. There's walking sticks to let you walk deeper into the woods and get better stuff. You can add butter to your recipes to make them worth more points, and all sorts of fun decisions in this game, but it's basically set collection. Now, you only get 1 action per turn, so you can take 1 card from the forest. The first 2 cards there are free to take, but then beyond that, you would have to spend walking sticks to be able to reach these cards. Another thing, you can take all the cards from what's called the decay. Every round there's going to be cards added to the decay, and you can take all of them as long as it's not over your hand limit. You can also cook 3 or more like mushrooms. You have to have a pan down already, but for only 1 action, you can cook a bunch of the same type of mushrooms and get the points shown on each card in your set. You might want to save up because you can add things like butter, which give you more points for having a certain amount of mushrooms in that set, and things like that. So you can push your luck a little bit and save up for a bigger turn. You can also sell your mushrooms to get walking sticks. Now, this won't give you points, but it gives you those walking sticks, which let you walk deeper into the woods and get better access to cards. Finally, you can just play an empty pan as your turn. You have to have empty pans played to be able to cook later. So a lot of neat decisions here. Again, cards get added to the decay every round, and these cards shift down and new cards come out. This mimics walking through the forest and finding things. Now, that part can get a little bit fiddly from time to time, but it's really not bad. That's my only minor complaint. It's really a fun set collection game for 2 players, and if you've ever been out in the woods hunting for morels like my wife and I do every spring, this game will be even more fun for you. But if not, it's still one to check out. Now, we're going to go back even further in time for this next game. It's a very small box card game called Familia. And I'm sure you know the designer, Friedman Freeze, who's most famous for Power Grid. Now, this is nothing like Power Grid, but it is by Rio Grande Games from way back in 2010. This is a mechanism-based card game that uses multi-use cards, which is one of my favorite mechanisms in gaming. Basically, you and your opponent are rival gang leaders trying to recruit these members to make your gang stronger and worth more points, basically. The theme is very weak, but the gameplay is really cool in this. So you're going to start with 4 0 cards, 1 in each color, and the colors represent a faction and they each have a special ability. Throughout the game, you have to decide whether to use your cards for the number or for their special abilities, which I'll discuss in a minute. Now, let's say you wanted to recruit a new member. You can always take a 0 card for free, but if you want to take another card, you got to play some cards below the value. So if I wanted the red 1, I'd have to play 2 red 0 cards, 1 value less. If I wanted that card, I'd have to play 2 green 1 cards. If I want the blue 3 on the end, I'd have to play 2 blue 2 cards. So you always play 2 of the card of the value below it, then you can take that card into your hand. You're basically just trying to upgrade your deck the whole time. It's a little bit like a deck builder. It reminds me a little bit of the coin upgrading system in Nidavellir, if you've ever played that game. So let's say I wanted this blue 1 card on the end. I would have to have 2 blue 0s in my hand, show that I have them, but I only play one of them to the table. Then I get to take the blue 1 into my hand and use it later. Now let's talk about the abilities. Red does not have a special ability, but they are all worth more points. So the red cards are just better points. Blue cards let you take other cards that you've already played back into your hand. So this would let me take up to 4 cards that I've already played back into my hand, which is very powerful. Now, if I only had a 2 blue, I could play that and take 2 cards that I've already played back into my hand. Now, the yellow faction reduces the value of every member that's out in the street so you can get them cheaper. So if you have a 4 yellow, that's going to reduce all the cards out there by 4. If you had a 2 yellow, it's only going to reduce all of them by 2. But then you could play that and then play lower cards to upgrade to those members out in the street. Green lets you use it as a wild of any other color, but 1 less. So a green 4 can be used as a green 4 or a 0 to 3 of any other color. So you could pair this green 4 with, say, a blue 2, and that would be like having 2 blue 2s to recruit a blue 3, and so on. If you had a green 2, you could use it as a green 2 or as a 0 to 1 of any other color. So I could use that with a blue 0 and then recruit a level 1 blue from the street. Or I could have played a yellow card first to reduce the value overall and then played that to get it even cheaper. So there's lots of cool little combos you can pull off. Play a blue card to get some cards back into your hand, and then play a yellow card to reduce the value of the cards that are out there, and then play a green card paired with another card and get a super cheap, deal on a level 4 guy or something like that. So Familia by Friedman Freeze gets high marks from me. Definitely one to check out if that looks cool to you. Like I said, it's kind of like a deck builder a little bit, and it's just a little combo-y card game that you could easily play in a pub or on a plane or on the couch. So check that one out, and we're going to keep the list moving here. With an even older game yet, we're going to go back 10 years before Familia to the year 2000. With this little hidden gem called Babel. Believe it or not, this is designed by the great Uwe Rosenberg and Hagen Dorgathen, and this is called a clever power struggle for 2 for a reason. This game is a power struggle. It is extremely cutthroat. You're going to be attacking each other every turn, pretty much, and I will say, if you don't like cutthroat games, this might be one to avoid. However, knowing how cutthroat it is, you can use that to your advantage as you plan out your maneuvers. You can sort of set traps for your opponents, knowing that they're going to want to attack you. And you can save up cards for later turns and things like that. I really like the card play in this game. It uses multi-use cards, once again, one of my favorite mechanisms. You can play cards to move your pawn, and then you can build pyramids wherever your pawn is. You can also try to group your armies together. Like you have all these ancient armies like the Assyrians and the Sumerians and whatnot. If you can get 3 of them together in a location, you can activate their special ability. There's lots of little subtle maneuvers you can do, but my favorite part of the game is your turn is as long as you want it to be. So as long as you have cards to play, you can sort of manipulate them how you want and make your turn last a really long time, or you can just get some cards and save up for a bigger turn later. So there's a lot of openness to how you take your turns in this game, and that leads to some pretty interesting surprise attacks and things like that. Now, I'm not going to go too in depth on how to play this because there is a little bit of rules overhead to this game. Once you understand it, it's very easy, but I'm just saying I might do a separate video altogether on the game of Babel. So this is definitely one to look into. I love the clever card play in this game. You can really be creative in generating different combos, attacks that your opponents don't see coming, and things of that nature. Love the artwork. The overall look of the game is great. It has that old school vibe. So once again, keep your eyes peeled for a video on Babel in the future, and click subscribe if you haven't yet so you can get updates when I do post new videos. And with that being said, we're going to go on to number 1 on my list of 2-player only games that you probably missed. I know I missed this one up until recently, and this is called King and Assassins. You're looking at the deluxe edition with the miniatures. There's also a regular edition that I believe uses standees instead, which works just as well. This is designed by Lucas Wozniak, and this was originally from 2013. This edition by Galacta Games came out in 2018. But either way, I missed out on it until 2021 is when I discovered it. I found it at a local game store. I knew nothing about it, and I bought it on a total whim, just based on the box art alone. And I'm so glad I found this. It's an asymmetrical 2-player game where each player has their own set of goals. One player is the king and the knights, trying to make it home to the castle after a long day. The other player is the citizens of the town, and among those citizens are 3 hidden assassins, kept secret from the king player. So there's this hidden information that makes the game extremely tense at all times between both players, and I will say the game is equally fun to play as the assassins or to play as the king. It's fun for different reasons, and it's equally tense on both sides of the coin. You have these handy-dandy player sheets here that remind you what you're allowed to do on your turn as each player. You read the rulebook once, all you need are these little reference sheets. It's that easy. To win as the Assassins team, you must deal 2 hits to the king successfully and basically assassinate the king. To win as the king, you must make it home safely to the castle or successfully arrest all 3 assassins. At the beginning of the game, the assassin will draw 3 of these characters, which correspond to the miniatures on the board. Those will be the secret assassins, who they will be trying to position in close proximity to the king. Each turn, you draw a card, which shows how many action points each player gets to use. Some of the cards will have a little red handcuff on them, like this here, which means the king player can arrest 1 citizen that turn, as long as they're right next to them. And that costs action points to arrest as well. So on your turn, you're just moving. I like to think of the king player and his army of knights sort of as like football, the king is like the running back and the knights are the blockers. They're trying to move citizens out of the way. They can push them and sort of make space for the king to move. The king is basically trying to get to the goal, which is the castle. Meanwhile, the other player is trying not to be obvious where they're moving the citizens. They want to be in close proximity to the king, but they also want to bluff their movements so that the knights will waste turns arresting the wrong citizens. At any point during the game, the assassin can choose to reveal himself and now can start killing off knights and ultimately deal blows to the king as well. When you hit the king takes on the red ring there to show he's been hit once, but then the knights will probably go and arrest that assassin on the next turn. So it's a nice little back and forth game that feels really different depending on which team you're playing for. And I will say I equally like playing as the king or the assassins. You know, when you're the assassin, it's so exciting to finally reveal yourself and deal that final blow. And when you're the king player, every other citizen looks suspicious to you. So you're trying to stay away from this guy and you're trying to stay away from that lady over there. She looks like she's up to no good. And it's so rewarding if you can finally make it to the castle safely. I just love this game. Such a great tension no matter which side you play for. And as soon as you're done, you're probably going to want to jump right back in and switch roles and play again. Now, before I sign off here, I want to show you a couple other 2-player only games from my collection. These are more well-known games, so I didn't feature them in the video. But if you've never played any of these, definitely check these out as well. We have Onitama, which is like chess with movement cards. We have Targi, which is a worker placement game for 2 players, and it works really well. That's a little bit heavier game. I love that one. We have Reiner Knizia's famous Battle Line, which visually looks a little bit like Babel, but plays much differently. Finally, we have Jaipur, which is a trading game where it's got a great timing and pacing element. You're trying to collect sets and know when the right time is to sell those sets for money. I love all 4 of these games, and I have some other 2-player only games that I plan to feature on future videos. So once again, make sure you click subscribe so you can discover more undiscovered board games on this channel.
And as
right
always,
here.
thank you so much for joining us on the Undiscovered Games video podcast. We really appreciate you watching and listening from wherever you are in the world. If you want to help the channel, you can click subscribe and share this video with your friends. There's also a donate link in the description if you wish to support us. Any proceeds go toward making more videos like this and just better quality content in the future. We really have a passion for finding these undiscovered games and sharing them with you. Also, we have an Instagram page if you're not familiar with that. Go give us a follow on the IG. We are at undiscovered_games. We post a lot of cool pictures and written reviews over there as well. So thanks again for watching, and we will see you on the next one.